The next step is to glue in the bottom so that it can be stitched. So before we head out or head into that, you can see that I've done the crisscross stitch all the way down. And a quick look inside. So what I've got on the table is a bunch of round objects. Could be a Sharpie marker, some pencils, a metal brush, and I've got my contact cement. These guys are gonna be temporarily put in place randomly around the circle so that it doesn't have the opportunity to quickly make contact when I'm not ready to have everything in the right position. So they're just little spacers to let me control my environment as I place this down. We're going to do the exact same thing that we previously did with the contact cement, of making sure we get it on nice and even on its mating surface. And then when I attach this, I'm going to aim to get the inside joint nice and snug, and if the outside joint isn't as snug, I'm not going to be worried about that, because later I'm going to come back with this beveler tool and take off that crisp edge, because I want to take away these little mistake areas that I made and be as likely as possible to get rid of them. Whereas if I was mating just this outside edge, I would have to live with more of them. So that's what I'm going to focus on while gluing this. And I'm looking forward to showing you what that looks like. Look at what it turned out to look like. I'll just barely let me hook that right inside there. Anyhow, back to gluing. All right. So now I'm going to look at this, and I'm going to kind of pick a really nice edge, which is right here. And I'm going to intentionally try to make that line up perfectly right underneath the seam. And as I was previously talking about, I'm going to make sure that I put some little doodads so that nothing can touch till I'm ready for it to. Alright, so again, I just have my thread out of the way. And now I'm going to work with just this front little section. Alright, so now I'm going to remove this guy. And I actually need to move these two just back a little bit. I'm going to work this side a little bit. Go back to this side a little bit. And now I'll start picking it up and just seeing how it's looking. So I've kind of got this area so far touching. All right, I've got a broad view. I've still got one piece in here. I've definitely got this part connected. I've got some parts that I've touched just lightly in the back here that I think I can still easily pull apart. And I'm just going to flip it back and forth a bunch to get really what I like. So what I'm seeing over here is that I've got a lot of gap. Gonna pull out this last piece, obviously. So in my best case scenario, this is that I think I made the groove so that I knew where to bevel things back a little too wide. So I think next time I'm going to dial back the stitching groover for that line a little closer to the actual thickness of the leather, so that I can then focus more on getting the 2 points out here exactly even all the way around, rather than focusing on the thicker part of that miter. So basically my miter was just too long of an angle. Just gonna, real quickly, because it's just so distracting to me, just take my smallest little guy. Now moving up to the number 2, so I had the number 1. Typically I save this step till after I've sewn, but I had stuff going everywhere with sort of how much I didn't keep a consistent circle on my lower part. I got a little carried away with my mitering. I will say that the number 2 has become my favorite size. While I have the beveler out, I'm going to go ahead and demonstrate beveling the top. So if these didn't line up nice and straight right there, you could take a chisel and make sure you're just not cutting towards your hand, and you could flatten out that edge. Mine turned out really great. I don't need to change it at all. So you could always start out with the number 1 to take a less aggressive of a cut. And you're just going to try getting a nice consistent bevel all the way around. And if you have a gap there, you may choose to, just like with the wood, not tear out. I have a really nice tight seam, so I wasn't worried about it. If you had a hard time, you might have scallops as you went in and out of each of those cuts, so you might do a little bit of cleanup work. And then I'm going to go ahead and finish this out by doing the inside as well. Great, and that just gave it a little bit of a nicer finished look to the whole piece. Got rid of some of the fuzziness. Definitely helps that I had a really crisp cut from back when I was using, when I cut it out of its blank. If you're somebody who likes to really go to the next level, you can get like a burnisher and use some wax and just a dab of water in there too, and you can just make your heart happy and burnish that edge there. It's not a big deal for me, sort of, on something like this. It's great to look a little bit more rustic and have some natural fibers coming out of it, but it's an option for you, and I wanted to introduce that. I'm making these flat pack kits available to all, so click the link below and find out how you can buy one for yourself or give it as a gift. Definitely make sure to follow along, as I've created a whole video series on step-by-step instructions on how to make these leather planter pots.